Metagaming is taking the fun out of WoW. Is this true, guys? I don't know what the meta is, honestly, right now. I play as a Blood DK, and shit, I'm so damn good at this game, I'm always meta. But let's see what Bellular has to say here.
You got comp.
Oh no!
I don't care. I'm gonna just.
Nope, Jax just killed the game.
I'm just gonna walk in and Sunfire and Moonfire and.
What is this? What's the new meta? What's the new God comp? What is this? In this video, I want to talk about why these God comps of Season 2 and 3 are worse than prior expansions. Oh, God.
Well,
Okay.
let's see. In this video, I will talk about why these God comps are worse than prior expansions and how Blizzard's planning and tuning coupled with predictable player nature are the primary causes, which is probably very true. So we got some points here that Dacron team has drafted up here. So very limited testing windows, non-ethics keys.
Darth Vader's
proper item level scaling, and little to no tuning in PTR have yet again set things up for failure, and the need for many waves of hotfixes, not only for the dungeons, but also classes and specs. The health of mobs wasn't scaled up enough from testing, so crowd control is king, trumping the damage output of the group when you're in higher level keys, which obviously will then bias your comp towards people who have got good, predictable CC. So apparently the new God comp, right, is we got Vengeance DH, we've got Ogvoker. What a surprise!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Flabbergasted is the term.
I did a run yesterday where the evoker that came in asked us if we wanted to be augmentation or devastation. What the hell is their DPS spec? Yeah, and we are all like, what are you talking about, man? It's augmentation. You have to go augmentation evoker for this run.
Of course, Ogvoker does a lot of damage by giving other people damage, so you got a lot of damage there, and just you got Oppressing Roar, Sigil of Silence, which can then be extended by Oppressing Roar to fully lock down mobs.
Yeah, and Demon Hunters are amazing right now.
It's the weird thing, right? We were talking about this in Guild, one of the raids. It was me and Pop, who's also our Discipline Priest. She's way better Discipline Priest than I am, with way more gear. I should play WoW more. IRL be busy, man. But actually, it should be less busy soon. I'll have things to talk about. Anyway, she was saying, like, no, don't take away our PI. It's fun PIing people. And that's the thing.
It's fun.
The way that I can just, be like, hey, Luke. And then he goes, woo, does more damage.
Does 400k on pull.
It's great.
That's great. Because it feels fun. And then that's the thing.
It feels great. I mean, I wanted that guy to be an augmentation evoker when he came into our group yesterday. Not just because it's like the meta, but because I wanted to pump. Right, like I was doing 180k damage, almost 200k damage at some points because he's pumping me up. It feels great, man. Who doesn't want to get pumped?
This here of an Ogvoker oppressing, roaring, and extending a Sigil of Silence. That's really like that. That should be good game design, shouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Great, cooperative play, awesome. And then, do you know what ends up being weird? There's a little goblin that appears that just says, "Hey, bring the player, not the class." And then we're stuck into the same old, do we bring the player, not the class? Or do we have class identity? What do we do? That has been
making groups, it becomes interesting.
Prevailing WoW discussion for such a long time. Be it Wrath, be it, I think Wrath is where it was really coined. I think it was, Ghostcrawler was talking about that. But yeah, interesting problem.
I just love, the conversation, because every time in my head I'm just listening to it, it's like, what you're arguing for is, do we set the thermostat to minimum or maximum? And you go, bro, did you ever hear of the middle?
Oh, I clearly set it to echo.
Yeah, did you ever hear of the...
Bad.
Yeah, that's awful. Yeah. So, straight up, okay, what if we set it to, somewhere in the middle? Or what if there's class identity and we look at outliers that are really dangerous and kind of...
Here's the thing, though. I don't know how Blizzard avoids this. Like, you can't make every class perfectly balanced, right? You can't make them all even. Like, all DPS classes do the same amount of DPS. That would be kind of boring. Anyways. But no matter what you do, there's always going to be a meta. The only thing you want to try to do is limit that meta's, meta-ness over all the other group comps, right? You don't want it to become so dominant that it basically... You can do things that you can't do with any other classes. You just want it to, it's easier, I guess, to use the meta. That's fine. But basically, how to stop it, you really can't. There's always going to be one group comp that's a little bit better than the others. That's unavoidable. But how much better is this one right now? I'm guessing really good.
Imagine they just nerfed PI a wee bit. So it's less of an outlier.
People always bring a warlock
It's like,
regardless.
well, is the
Especially
problem the
for raid,
principle
yeah.
or the result? I think that's or sorry, I should say, is the problem the principle or the outcome? Because a lot of times people will say, well, the principle's the problem because obviously that's how we got here. Then you go, no, just fix the outcome.
Yeah, it
It's like,
becomes a problem
yeah,
when people don't
just
invite certain
nerf it.
classes because
I
of
guess
this.
what's interesting
Just tune it down.
interesting here is, this is going to be from that higher end perspective. Even looking at some of the video comments,
That's
people
true.
like, I'm a 2940, IO Mistweaver.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Fucking good for you, holy shit.
Damn.
the difference between tanks has never been such a large gap. I have a friend who mains Brewmaster, and I found running keys with him is significantly harder than with a Vengeance DH, despite him being a great Brewmaster. The same can't be said for
Sure.
Blood DK, can be said for Blood DK, Prot Warrior, and Guardian. The immense amount of group-wide damage control is just leagues above others. So then
Yeah.
it's quite strange because a solution to this, and this is where it kind of gets interesting, is to give everyone the God Comp. By which I mean homogenize utility across classes and specs.
Yeah, but doesn't that make it boring?
Then, to access that, immense amount of CC that is disproportionate.
So Windwalker Monk is like the best tank right now in the game. Is that I didn't realize that, but I play a Blood DK, and I get invited mostly, but maybe it gets worse if you're pushing higher keys. So that's I had no idea. That's interesting.
In an infinite
But you can't
scaling
give everybody
world.
the same abilities. That's boring as
Everyone
shit.
can get that. But now we have less class identity.
Yeah.
Because, you could even say, well, we'll have a different flavor of CC from this class to this class, but you have 13 classes.
Is
Can't
Windwalker
make
Monk the
13
best
different
tank? I
flavors
don't
of
know.
CC? Not really. Not in terms of your fundamentals. So it's a really, it's a challenging problem from Blizz. Because if they are going to have differentiation in...
Saying Windwalker Monk. Brewmaster is their tank. I'm sorry. Windwalker is not. I'm misspeaking. Okay, you guys know what I mean. Jesus, you guys always
in
get up.
these types of
Chad
CC,
never
they're
let
going
it-
to have this
you guys
problem.
never let
It's
anything
just
go.
the way it's going to be.
You guys never let anything
And not
go.
even just CC, in literally everything.
Yeah.
There's always going to be like that kind of difference.
I mean, I remember last season.
You have access to certain tools,
You know,
and it's the same thing. that
Druids
happens
were
in
the
every,
best tanks in the
every
game.
single video game that's in any capacity competitive, and has a level of difficulty to it. There will always be a meta. The only difference that actually, what actually shows up here is where does
You
the
bitch.
meta appear?
You fucking.
Does the meta appear
This is what I get for trusting. I'm not doing this.
For me?
That's
Am I ever going to get declined because
That was a
people
well
whisper in my
done. Good
boomkin
blur.
and I say yeah, and they go and not invite me? Is that going to be made like 10 to 12 to 15?
This is always
that
going to
going
happen. It's unavoidable.
a thing?
That's very true.
Or am I going to be fine until it hits 2025? Or is it fine until you go to you're hitting?
Are Druids still
28
the
or
best tank
29
right
or
now?
Something like that, where it's literally the only the top 20 players give a shit, and then it trickles down. Because obviously a trickle down of meta is probably going to stop at some point or close enough to it. And it's like if it's flat enough, it might not matter for so long. And it's just it's frustrating to me because it's just the optimizing the fun out of it in a way.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where, a 2940 Mistweaver, yeah, you're 2940. That's pretty fucking high.
2940.
You're starting to get out
man.
of the range of.
Who do you play with at
should give a fuck
2940?
about you, and that's that sounds rude, but still no. There's definitely a point where
There is, yeah. There is
If
a
you-
point, surely, in IO where someone gets so high, you're like, they're good. It doesn't matter what they're playing, they're good, and I'm going to invite them. That's true.
one thing's to be different.
But it's hard to get there. You end up in elo hell where people won't invite you because your IO is low, but you can't get your IO up because you're playing a class that nobody wants in their group, and it's like a destructive cycle that just keeps circling on itself.
It
It's
cannot
a
be
snake
the same
eating
and
its
also
own
different.
tail.
It's like, well,
can't get
okay,
out
well,
of
what
it.
would you maybe there's a case of just.
I feel like
flattening.
pally tanks are always good for
And
Mythic Plus.
clearly it's not flat enough in a bunch of us. But it's going to happen eventually. At some point, someone will say Vengeance Demon Hunter is better. Why? Because it has this
I
thing
agree.
that is better for these 4 dungeons than the other one.
The Farrak Legendary will change some of this meta, for sure. I agree, King Julian. And especially, Blood Death Knights are very dependent on their weapon and their gear. as our warriors and other classes. But Blood DK specifically, I always feel like a legendary completely changes everything for us. Going back to other expansions, because we do so little damage, and then we start to do a lot of damage when we get really geared, and then give us a legendary, and now we're healing and doing damage like on a crazy level. That's what would become meta usually.
Maybe you get a point where it's okay. Well, Vengeance Demon Hunter is good for these 4 dungeons, and
Blood DK damage is already up. Add the legendary, it's going to be legendary.
It's like, yeah, that's just homogenization. People don't like that, because what happens here, and this is kind of interesting. There's a way to do it in talents, right? But like the thing that's kind of scuppy is you homogenize for the top end,
blood is
and
the
that
only
spreads
tank
across the entire player base.
Does indeed.
Balance does not do that to the same extent.
That's right. Paladin tanks use
Homogenization
shields.
is the top 100 Mythic Plus players are kind of frustrated that in order to be the top 100 Mythic Plus players, they have to play a class that they're not super fond of.
Yeah, see, that sucks.
And it's like, well, how do we fix that?
Yeah,
well, what if we make no one have fun? Which is obviously that's an exaggeration, but what if we then reduce the thing for everyone across the entire game? And that's like ultimately where I think the like homogenization problem comes from. And I'm just like, no, make these
and warrior. Yeah, blood DKs are the only ones that are going to be affected by the
does
legendary. Yeah, we are establishing that in chat. Yep, and that'll certainly help them out. But will it make them part of the meta? I don't know. The legendary recently got buffed, so now haste and crit apply to it. So we'll see.
Flatten it where possible.
I think it's to be determined.
Just try to flatten it so it's not
how good
that
it's going to
bad.
be.
Because, and this is the thing that I always can notice. There's people people at the top end are always going to have problems because they're never not going to have. Because
the top end of any game works typically.
Yeah, because they are breaking the game because of the infinite scaling.
Yeah, for sure.
You'll see less of this in.
Oh yes, Blizzard has literally designed a self-breaking game.
Yeah,
that's what infinite scaling does in a situation like this.
And the point of this is to be so hard you can't do it, which is pushing their classes to the absolute limits, which means a 0.1% difference in capability becomes the only thing that matters at a certain point. And that's kind of what's happening here a lot of the time. And like obviously there's a pretty big cultural problem where I see people saying like who's there.
Yeah, I saw it cut out for a second, but it's good now.
Yeah, I had people deny me on normal rigs as running balanced druid. Yeah, that's people being dumb. I don't really know what you do about that, but homogenization isn't really the answer.
Yeah.
I think the answer for that is, ironically, the answer to that is make it easy enough that it's fine. Or go for cyclical balance and just change it randomly. Just change it randomly over the week, happens. I think. Something else. I know it's a survival.
Yeah, I'm hoping my legendary is going to make up for my shitty skill.
Good logs. Yeah, player base at lower levels live by tier lists. That is one of that's like a cultural perception problem, and I think that can be solved as long as the balance is reasonably good for long enough. But there isn't really too much to like actually solve that. I don't know. I see people demanding OGs and like 14 keys.
What?
Yeah. Like this is.
But that's the thing. Like I was saying, I feel like meta. Yes, it'll affect top end because to push as high as they can, they need to all be playing like the best classes. But I really feel like meta affects the lower end a lot more because people who lack skill think that the perfect comp is going to make up for that, and they're going to be able to push the key higher. So that's a problem. Not being invited to lower keys, and then you can't get your.
It's not an easy solve. It is pretty awkward. But I mean, yeah, good point, Souls. And if you're getting denied a raid because your class, it might be because you're not doing well, and the class is an excuse. So I wouldn't say the class would be an excuse in that case, but what I would say is if you have like decent logs and you go, yeah, well, I have proven I can do this, and go for it. And if you don't have logs, then it is the rough situation of get a guild. Get a guild.
So much is solved by that.
I guess.
And that sounds pretty like awful.
Yeah, it does.
In like a dismissive way. But it sort of is kind of the point of the way this where the responsibility lies for the gameplay experience is kind of weird.
Yeah, you still get declined to
plus
plus
ultimately
20s.
down to you.
Yeah, see, that's a problem.
And being denied a little
That's a
bit
problem.
or for a couple of groups sucks ass, but it won't be the end of the world, and persistence will actually kind of get you there. Maybe you're applying for groups that are literally like, basically, you see the note and it's like, there's a group blasting a wipe. It's like maybe if you apply for a group that's someone who's clearly stoned and just like, I'm gonna see how this raid goes.
Yeah, but see, this is the problem, right? So you end up getting denied to like groups who are really focused on pushing the key, but you get invited to like maybe by this guy who's not paying attention to comps, doesn't care about anything, isn't even looking at IOs, and what that does is you end up in a bad group, and then you don't get the key done, and guess what? Now your IO doesn't go up again, and it's like just keeps destroying you. It destroys your like your even desire to play, because you're going in, you're doing this entire dungeon, and this guy just invited like all the riffraff that applied, so the group is really bad, and it has nothing to do maybe with comp. It's just like he invited like really bad players, low IO, not a good healer. This guy's DPS is shit, like nothing's working well, and the group falls apart. And guess what? Now you just wasted time. Your IO is still low, and you're still not getting invites to groups that actually are good and want to push something.
You apply for that group, you're probably in, which is better. And that's the thing where that's
why finding a streamer
happened,
with key running community isn't so shitty.
That's what
to
I
make
think
friends.
that
Yeah, people like
I
Addison
will
and Leaky
never,
Donut and stuff. Yeah, those are good communities.
a raid, probably. 'Cause I couldn't be bothered with that shit. I just do it with the guild. But when I did do that a lot more, I would always opt for
Draz,
the
another one.
shittier looking raids, because I would like obviously not have logs and that stuff like that. Once I had curve and logs, then I'd apply for the good ones. But there is a little bit of a you do.
That's what I can't stand is levers. Yeah,
You do have
me
to
too.
figure things out in that sense.
Blizzard said they were going to penalize people or like come up with a penalty for leaving Mythic Plus dungeons. I think that should be a thing, for sure. And maybe like the longer you're in there, the more like leaving will be a penalty. Like I don't think somebody should get a penalty for like entering a dungeon and they leave like 1 second in. That's kind of annoying because you got to reform a group and everything. But I hate it when you're like 20 minutes into a dungeon or you're at the final boss and someone leaves. There is no worse feeling. You literally just like those are like 35 minutes of your life that you'll never get back, and you got no credit for it. Nothing. Like it's the worst. It's the worst. As the tank, I try not to leave, ever. I don't think I've ever. I can honestly say I don't think I've ever left a Mythic Plus run, ever, until somebody else leaves, because I feel responsible. Like as a tank, I'm like, okay, I'm dying, everyone's dying, but I'm just gonna keep pushing, and we'll just get through this. Whatever. At least it counts towards the vault. But yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I know. Will they ever implement the penalty? I don't know. But they did drop a blue post about the fact that they are working on something. And they have no announcement yet, but they're working on something.
For a second, with size and bad availability in small server.
I've left when people are being toxic. I try to stop people from doing that.
Yeah, there is a case of sometimes it just sucks.
Because I know it'll make people leave.
And Blizzard can make small steps to fix community issues, because this is more of a community and cultural issue than is anything else. And some of it boils down to the like I was talking about, people want the easy challenge, the easy clear the thing and it's over.
Go with a vote system to clear. Another thing I've kind of said is like maybe if somebody leaves, I think Blizzard should give you the option to like break the key, but still finish it by inviting somebody. So like say you have like 10 minutes left and somebody leaves. I think it's okay if like you say, okay, cancel the timer. Let's get somebody in here and still finish this. And you get credit for it as like a +0, but at least it counts towards your vault or something, whatever. Maybe it still counts as the key, but you can't time it anymore. It won't go towards your IO. It'll just be, you'll finish it for your vault. Like I hate the feeling of somebody leaving and it just wrecks everything. It's the worst.
Well, Matt, I've just received word from a trusted source.
Oh dear.
Thanks, Reed.
Liquid THD has just tweeted. Just a reminder, it's never too late.
I've done the
delete
4-man too on a final boss because somebody
Yeah.
left on the final boss and we 4-manned it. We were so frustrated. It took us 3 polls to be able to do it, but we eventually 4-manned it. It was freaking horrible.
Too late because that shows weakness. And also,
Nothing I love from throwing a THD tweet at Matt.
Yeah, it's just a fucking fly to swat, isn't it? Like,
You see, it's great. You only get basic reactions and comebacks. And
Vote at the end of the key if someone leaves, they get a penalty. That could work.
like, yeah, that's
I didn't
fine,
know that's how
but
League does
also
it.
fuck off. Like, it's an element of people are allowed to speak to their own incentives and their own desire and stuff, but if you're speaking to your own incentive and own desire, then you can't be too mad when
Formatting a
someone with
boss.
a different incentive or desire tells you to fuck off. That's kind of thing. They can always there are always gonna be meta chasers, but most
I wonder.
yeah, like obviously there is that point of tryhards are really annoying but meta, good players aren't, and then the best are again.
True.
Because
True.
It's a
I
case
agree
of
with that.
it's almost like what was I about to say, Terrain? What the fuck is wrong with my brain? There's this just slice of these players that think they're good, they're not. These players are good, and
It's true, though. If you need the meta to finish a high key, then you're just not that good. You're not that good. If you're really good, I've always said this before when we look at DPS charts, if you're really good at the game, yes, you might not top the charts in your raid because your class at that time is not the best class in the game for DPS, but you will still do good DPS because you are just fucking good at the game. You don't need the class to carry you. You are just good at the game, and you can always be top 5 or just pull really good DPS because you are freaking great at the game. I've seen people do it 100 times before. I've literally seen people who are top 3 in DPS in one of our raids, and their class at the time is like bottom 5 in DPS, but they're just fucking good. They're just really good at the game. There's always it goes back to the old saying: get good, man. Get good. The comp shouldn't matter. If you're good, you're gonna get the shit done.
this is where anything actually matters. It's just that what matters skips this bit.
I know for a fact,
'cause it
even when
doesn't
blood
matter here,
DK
you
is
know it.
low,
And then
there's
goes this bit where they think it matters.
there
and
are
doesn't,
blood DKs out there that still pull high numbers because they're just good.
Yeah.
which is kind of awkward.
And
You know,
it
it's
is
like-
just, it's one of those things where this is an infinite problem in gaming.
Yeah,
I hate to
there's-
say,
Yeah,
there
this
is
exists in
no
all
easy
games.
solution here, so I don't really belabor it too much more.
Yeah.
Just that, the traditional problem that rears its head is doing so again. I think, Jack isn't exactly advocating for any extreme solutions here. I think he's more just saying, careful and early tuning,
I always
balancing
play the same
work,
class,
a little bit
no matter
more of a
what the
focus on
comp
this
is.
kind of problem on LFR, and ultimately what will be in people's heads is Season 1 will have had meta picks, but not a god comp. So sometimes we can talk in absolutes when to maybe people who are most at the top, it's going to be something in terms of degrees. And maybe we are just, the thermostat is a few degrees too high and it needs to be lower.
Yeah.
there
Yeah. You
was
can't stop
something
it.
else I wanted to
There'll always be a meta.
say. I was just saying the problem is you also have people like Tettles releasing bullshit videos on M Plus suggesting you reroll to the meta classes.
That's
just
that's
stop.
ridiculous.
That's an interesting one because
No, it's not his fault, because what his job is to, for the very high-end Mythic Plus audience who want the, good quality information on what is efficacious in, along their chosen goals. He maybe it would be easier if he started off by saying, "Hello, fellow re-rollers. Here's what we're doing this week." I know that's fair. I'm not trying to roast you or anything, but
Here's the comp you should play.
that's like providing a legitimate service for the people who want that. I suppose so much
true.
of this, right? So much of the problem is people take that way out of context.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you are, by the way, not at all. I mean,
They think it
when
has to
God
be.
Comp was happening in Season 2, and people were complaining that they just could not get into keys in the group finder. And if you're talking about a 15 or a 20, God Comp shouldn't matter. Because
shouldn't,
so
yeah.
much of this, so much of these Mythic Plus things, they're a problem whenever number scaling means you literally cannot survive Tyrannical without pulling some bullshit.
Right.
Or maybe cannot survive a certain mob pack and Fortified without pulling some bullshit.
Right. He's right.
that's more or less what I was gonna say. It's like it doesn't.
What if Mythic Raids had Mythic Plus? And, it just the percentages went up and up and up and up. There would then be...
Kind of with
there'd
faded
be a
rating.
time where the only way you could get through a certain part of a boss is to pull some cheesy bullshit. Because that's the nature of infinite scaling.
Yeah.
So it's quite tricky for Blizzard's, from Blizzard's
He's right.
sort of position then. Though I suppose it's 28s, 29s, that's really as high as it goes, right?
Yeah, more or less.
For most people.
More or
I
less.
wonder, right, I'm not advocating for this, but how much of this, if Mythic Plus was clamped at Mythic Plus 20, how much of this would still be a discussion? And I don't mean that
You're
as
saying Moshi, you're saying that you always think that pure DPS classes, that all 3 of their specs are DPS should always be higher. I think they usually are, honestly. If you think about them, Warlocks, you got Mages, Rogues, Hunters. There's usually one spec of their 3 specs that's in the top 5. Almost every damage meter we've ever looked at, they always almost have at least one that's viable at any given time. Whereas a priest, yeah, sure, like you're making the example of a priest, yeah, sure, sometimes they'll be at the top of the chart, but they only have one DPS spec. Well, there's discipline too, but they don't, say Shadow is their main DPS spec. That's not always at the top. They're not always viable in DPS, whereas the pure DPS classes always have at least one spec that is viable and really good. I mean,
like a comeback or a slapdown.
It's kind of true what you're saying.
Legitimately, I would be interested
For
because
the
God
pure
Comp still
DPS
would
classes.
perform
They
best,
usually are the
but
best.
perhaps it wouldn't be as literally required to get past certain mechanics or packs. And maybe there's, I don't know, something in that. Basically, TLDR, infinite scaling, very hard.
Yeah.
When it hits your game design.
Design thing to break.
What's he eating?
Everyone looks at it and goes, "Why is this breaking? Why is this thing that says on the side, this will break when pushed too far?
Yeah,
Why
it's-
is it breaking when
We're
pushed too far?"
Huh, why has Blizzard designed a mechanic in these mobs
Infinite
that's
scaling.
literally impossible outside of specific situations? Probably not a design choice. That's a design choice that's a result of scaling, not a result of Blizzard doing game design.
Right. Because you're running a plus 35 key or something.
So, what interesting fun. What other things are there to talk about?
I love fun. I wish I could have it again.
Oh my, well, Japan is taking him out. There you go. Sorry, Matt, you've peaked. It's never going to be like this again.
Fuck, I hate this country and everyone in it.
Certainly, after being in America and then coming back to Northern Ireland, you do just sort of think, like, I suppose there's a reason, those Americans, they seem to have a lot of positivity and gumption.
Do we?
You come back here and everyone's self-deprecating. Nah. Why would I do that? It'll probably be shite. I'll stay inside instead.
Well, maybe because he lives in Ireland where it rains a lot. Maybe if he goes to Seattle, he'll see the same attitudes. I don't know. But is Blood DK is DK the same since they have 2 DPS specs? I mean, DK has a better... What I'm saying is, like, the more DPS specs you have, the odds of you being near the top of the charts are better at any given time. So yes, like a DK has a better shot than... who's an example of a class that has only 1 DPS spec? Maybe it's Priest. I don't know. But, you got a 2 and 3 shot of one of your DPS specs being good enough to be at the top. Whereas a Priest has a 1 and 3 shot, whereas a Mage has a 3 and 3 shot, right? They have they have 3 specs that could be up there. DH, yeah, Demon Hunter. They only have 1 spec, right? So when their 1 spec is shitty at DPS, well, a Vengeance Demon Hunter is just not going to be good at that time. What are you going to do? Whereas Mage, you have Fire, Arcane, and Frost. They have 3 shots at being good. That's the way I see it with that. Good video from Bellular, though.